So, chapter 13 is a relational approach to healing abandonment. And this is a reworking of a professional article that the author wrote. So if I can find it online, then I'll put a link to it in the video. And it's what is reasonable to expect from working with a therapist. And then there's a section later on how to find a therapist, how to create a co-counselling relationship with a friend, and online forums. So the relational dimension of psychotherapy. Many CPTSD survivors have never had a safe enough relationship. Healing our attachment disorders usually requires connection with someone with good emotional intelligence in order to guide the client to let go of the automatic habit of rejecting their feelings. The book mentions the co-regulation of affect, which is a Daniel Siegel quote. Safe and empathetic eye and voice contact with another, with good, safe and empathetic eye and voice contact with another person with good enough emotional intelligence. And it also goes into mirror neurons, which I think when the book was written was quite new stuff, whereas that feels fairly commonplace to me now. Relational healing in complex PTSD. There was a quote that I wrote down: talking to mum was like giving ammunition to the enemy. So if we grew up in environments like that, then we never got to learn communication skills that create closeness and belonging. It talks about emotional flashback management, that we need close enough relationship with the therapist to be able to describe humiliation and overwhelm. So the therapist needs to be nurturing enough to provide empathy and calm support, and needs to be able to tolerate and work with an evaporation of trust that comes with CPTSD. Needing to work on reassurance and trust restoral over and over and over again. 4 key qualities of relating that are essential to development of trust and the relational healing that stems from it are empathy, authentic vulnerability, dialogicality, and collaborative relationship repair. So, with empathy, if we are hard and unsympathetic with clients, I think there's talking about therapist perspective from now, then we trigger the same sense of danger and abandonment that the client experienced with parents. So viewing behaviours through the lens of trauma and transference, and the behaviours make sense. So if the therapist isn't able to provide that, then it's not a good match. Authentic vulnerability. So this is an emotional reflection of the client's feelings, requiring a level of vulnerability from the therapist. Therapeutic emotional disclosure. So an example of this is, I'm sorry, I just missed what you said. I got a little distracted by my anxiety over my dental appointment later. Modelling how emotions can be expressed healthily. And we needed modelling to get over our fear of being attacked, shamed, or abandoned. It talks about regularly expressing genuine indignation that the client was taught to hate themselves, awakening survivor instincts to also feel this, which creates standing up to the inner critic and then builds self-advocacy. Repeatedly responding with empathy and compassion to suffering, awakening survivors' self-empathy. It talks about guidelines for self-disclosure. So therapists should use self-disclosure sparingly, offering self-disclosure primarily to promote healing and trust in relationship, to normalise what it is to be human. The advice was, don't share raw and unintegrated vulnerabilities. Don't share to work through your stuff. And don't accept a client's soothing. Remind them the work is client related. Thank them for their concern and state that you've got the therapist has got external support. Emotional self-disclosure and sharing parallel trauma. So the author has written a book which means that this sort of self-disclosure is openly available. Dialogicality, a fluid exchange between speaking and listening. Reciprocal interactions prevent polarization to narcissist and codependence. So it's a teamwork approach, offering feedback in a take-it-or-leave-it way. Where normal narcissistic needs are developmentally arrested, clients do need to be heard lots. They need to discover the nature of their own feelings, needs, preferences and views before they're able to receive another's. Group therapy is powerful for healing shame. CPTSD survivors benefit from psychoeducation about CPTSD, and when they learn about it, then they can be keen to participate in self-help. Therapeutic withholding, which some therapies have, is in this case is like a representation of father absence. We need the balance of the mothering, listening, unconditional love, and fathering, encouragement and guidance. We need that balance. So coaching provides the fathering aspect. Too much coaching, not enough listening, can interfere with self-discovery. Dialogicality in the 4 Fs. Fawn, codependent response, may use listening defense to encourage the therapist to do most of the talking. The freeze or dissociative response needs a lot of encouragement to talk. They can get lost in superficial associations and need guiding towards their feelings. The fight narcissist response avoids intimacy with talking defense. Monologuing exacerbates their sense of entitlement, so they need to be helped to learn to listen. And I would note here that fawn type therapists may hide in listening mode with fight types. And a flight or obsessive compulsive type can obsess about safe abstract concerns that are removed from deep inner issues. If they're not encouraged to engage, they can stay stuck in superficial worries, left brain dissociation from repressed pain. Then it goes into collaborative rapport repair, which is reparation from conflict resolution. Restoring intimacy when a disagreement temporarily disrupts our feelings of being safely connected. Best friends are those who work through conflicts. They've moved through the fair weather friends stage. Owning your part in a conflict validates the normalness of relational disappointment and amiable resolution. Taking responsibility for your role in a misunderstanding also helps deconstruct the outer critic belief of the client that relationships have to be perfect. It models a constructive approach to resolving conflicts, leading most clients to explore their contribution to the conflict. So fight types are least likely to own their part in a misattunement. Less extreme fight types are occasionally open to being educated on their controlling defence mechanisms and see how much they pay for being so controlling. Promising relationships wither and die from an inability to work through differences and conflicts. Then there's a case study of moving through abandonment into intimacy. Flashbacks in this story intensified when the person moved in with their partner. And over the course of months of therapy work, he felt able to be vulnerable with his partner. Their relationship then deepened. So she was able to be more vulnerable with him. Then the book talks about earned secure attachment, that good enough intimacy-rich attachment becomes possible when doing this work. Connection with a therapist can be a transitional earned secure attachment, which can lead to an earned secure attachment outside of therapy. And it says that helping survivors out of flashbacks is a necessary form of rescuing. Rescuing the inner child from the critic is the need that no one met when we were children. It talks about that rescuing is usually not recommended, but in complex CPTSD, then there is a point where it needs to happen until the client can do it themselves. Finding a therapist. So the book goes into interviewing a therapist. It recommends having a trial appointment with at least 3 therapists to determine if their approach is able and willing to work in a compatible way with your needs. A suitable therapist will be happy to answer your questions about their approach and talk on the phone for 5 minutes or more before scheduling an appointment. If they respond to you in an aloof, critical or shaming way, cross them off your list and keep looking. Ask if they've done their own therapy and their own family of origin work. Then it talks about finding an online group or forum, and there was a big list, which I've not looked into to see if they still exist. So the book was written a number of years ago now, but there were some websites that I recognised. Then there was live meetings, which it suggested that if you didn't get anything from the website recommendations, that just to search for online support group for recovering from childhood trauma and see what comes up. Important guidelines for finding a safe enough online or in-person group. If you find a leader or member that is over-dominating a group through narcissistic behaviours such as monologuing, monopolising the time, pressuring anyone with unwanted advice, or shaming anyone in any way, please allow yourself to leave and try and find another group. Then it talks about the co-counselling model and suggests to schedule weekly an exchange for 30 to 60 minute sessions. So co-counselling is using active listening. So this uses non-verbal feedback that is not intrusive to let them know you're paying attention, such as and and repeating keywords or phrases back. It talks about an advanced mirroring, which is paraphrasing what we hear, and asking open-ended questions such as, can you tell me more about that? Or what else happened? Or do you have any other thoughts and feelings about this? People vary on the amount of active listening they find helpful, so be open to giving and receiving feedback on this. And begin with a commitment to refrain from advice giving, criticism, or unsolicited feedback. Don't give feedback unless it's clearly asked for. be specific about the type of feedback you want if you ask for it. And let what is said in the session stay in the session.